Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast. In today's episode, we take a deep dive into supplier data with our guest, Lana Radosevic, who is Global Supplier Lead in the Astellas Procurement Excellence team. As she says, good quality supplier data is the backbone of procurement. So we discuss her advice on how to get accurate supplier data and how to drive improvements in data management. I hope you enjoy the interview.
The PharmaSource podcast is sponsored by Thermo Fisher Scientific. Thermo Fisher Scientific provides industry-leading pharma services for drug development, clinical trial logistics, commercial manufacturing, and clinical research. They partner with customers in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and life sciences industries as their trusted CDMO to deliver medicine to patients faster.
Lana, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Thanks for getting up so early for it.
You're welcome. I am excited to share my story with you.
Let's talk then. So you're Global Supplier Lead for Procurement Excellence currently at Astellas, relatively new to the procurement field. I think it only been working in the procurement for the last 4.5 years or so, both as a startup and now at Astellas, part of a much larger global organization. But before we get into all that, interested to know how you got started and when you first got interested in cell biology. Where did it all start for you?
I've always been intrigued by biology and chemistry since high school, and I studied molecular and cell biology as a result of that, with focus on biochemistry. So it seemed natural to try out the biotech world, see what that's about after I graduated from college. And while working in that area, I realized I was very much inspired to continue developing my career in that industry, because I saw so much potential with what biotechnology can do to improve people's lives.
Yeah. Were you already in the Bay Area then at that point, and so like surrounded by the whole emerging biotech industry?
Yeah. So actually, interestingly enough, I came to the Bay Area to attend college at UC Berkeley. And having studied molecular and cell biology and not wanting to go into the medical field or do necessarily research, I felt with my educational background, it made sense to try out working for a biotech organization as well for that reason. And I realized that I lived in an area that had a huge biotech hub, really, probably one of the biggest in the world. And I mean, Silicon Valley is full of tech companies and biotech companies. So it was just, again, another driver to try that out.
And was it working as a scientist, a lab assistant? Was it that side of things that attracted you? Or because you quickly worked in a more of a production planner role, didn't you?
Yeah. So actually, I was not, because I didn't want to do when I was in college and doing biochemistry, I realized that I liked the planning aspect of experience more so than actually doing the experiment. And I have a very strong planning gene. So I've always had that drive and appreciation and enjoyment of planning. So I started off actually working as a lab associate, and that was fun for a year or two. That I very quickly became a supervisor within that group. I was 24 when I got my first supervisor role. And I'm very much a people person. So I realized I wanted to, and I naturally gravitated towards more planning and cross-functional team type of roles rather than, working just in a lab type of environment. And so I actually, I had various roles while I worked at Bayer, even before Bayer, that gave me kind of a good comprehensive experience within the biotech industry, and starting off with supervising in various departments to doing discrepancy management for a while. And that's where I got to lead and collaborate with cross-functional teams on problem solving and also process improvements. And then the last piece of, I guess, the career experience was moving to supply chain management. This is prior to getting into procurement. So I think all of those kind of steps led me ultimately in a good direction to be better prepared for being in procurement. And I understand that a lot of my procurement colleagues also have all kinds of experiences and have not necessarily worked in procurement, but having that broad experience and knowledge, I think, has put me in a good position in my current role.
Yeah. So when you were working in, or when you are working in those cross-functional teams of different stakeholders, different communication challenges, what advice could you share about how to become effective in that kind of environment? What types of teams were you working with, and what types of problems were you trying to solve?
Yeah, good question. So this was again during my discrepancy management days, but also during working as a production planner in SCM, supply chain management. So while I was in discrepancy management, people may not necessarily understand what that means. So let me just give some background. The focus was really investigating the root cause when something goes wrong in manufacturing. It could be an equipment related issue, it could be a process related issue, person not following procedure, and so on. So a big part of that was investigating the root cause, but another big piece was related to how do we justify releasing the product that just had this issue, right? So that involved working with engineering, with manufacturing sciences, and also with the manufacturing personnel, depending on the issue. So the problem-solving part was more identifying the root cause, implementing corrective actions, preventative actions, writing up technical reports that the FDA would then read later on. That was my least favorite part, but it was a big part. But like I said, my favorite part was actually working with teams, because I just love working with people from all over. That was within the discrepancy management side. And then with the supply chain management side, it was different kinds of problems that we would encounter. Those involved issues where we're not getting raw materials on time, right? It also involved working with various cross-functional teams, quality assurance or quality control, more so quality assurance when I was supporting packaging operations as a production planner, and engineering and whatnot. Again, trying to figure out. In fact, I worked with the buyer planner that was responsible for ensuring that we had the raw materials for packaging. So the problems, probably the biggest problems related in that area, were related to us not being able to produce something because there was an issue with it, or produce to move forward with our plan, right? The plan that I created. And so we have to come up with alternative, or making sure that we have the raw material we need. That was something that required, very strong relationship with my buyer planner colleague. So yeah, I've had quite a few challenges, I would say, in certain regards when working with certain subject matter experts, where simply it could have been a personality thing, but also maybe because, they may have been considered a subject matter expert in a certain area, and I was pretty young at that time. And so just having that, feeling of trust and respect that you build, I think, over time. There were, challenges in that regard when it came to, okay, let's move this forward. I need your input at this time. Again, I think because I tend to be very authentic with people, and try to build healthy rapport relationship, that has really helped me working cross-functionally with people with all kinds of backgrounds. And so I would say building strong relationships, I don't care who you're working with, is the key to being able to work successfully. If you don't have a good rapport with someone, it doesn't matter, how much you may want to try to change their mind or whatever, it's just not going to be an effective working relationship. You're not going to get as much out of them. It's understood, of course, that in certain situations you have an easier time building that relationship than others, depending on, how much interaction you have with that person. But every opportunity you get where you interact with that person, I think it's important to have that authentic interaction, and where you're showing that, you're working as a team, rather than, it's not like, oh, what is it in for me? It's what is it in for us, right? And how is our collaboration going to benefit the organization?
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And incredibly relevant, of course, also for what you then went on to do, which is in procurement, where, you have to adapt those skills to both internal and external suppliers as well, of course. How did you find that transition from the product planner role moving into procurement? Were there any skills or knowledge gaps you had that you had to acquire and develop to make that transition? So
interestingly enough, just to give you some background, I had no previous experience in supply chain management, but because I had the planning gene, I was very good at planning. that was one of the key transferable skills that allowed me to be very successful within supply chain management, despite the challenges. I think my people skills and the planning skills and what I just talked about are some of the strongest transferable skills that help me be successful both within supply chain management as well as within procurement. I'm also a pretty quick learner. And so even though I had no previous experience in procurement or supply chain management, I was very much inspired to learn the information. And I think that's the key, is you have to be curious and want to learn these things, but you also need these transferable skills that will help in that regard. And so having, I think that drive to be challenged, to want to learn on top of being good with interacting with people and therefore benefiting from learning from your colleagues with having those good relationships all helped position me to be successful in both my current role and my previous role in supply chain management.
So after Astellas acquisition, then you sort of your role changed to being global supplier lead within Procurement Excellence. So I'm quite interested to know more about that. So what does, I think Procurement Excellence can mean different things to different people. What does it mean to you? What kind of projects do you get involved with?
So Procurement Excellence, at least from what I've experienced within the organization that I work for now, is mainly focused on working on continuous improvement projects, specifically for global procurement, right? So our main customers include category managers, sourcing leads, procurement business partners who focus on procurement-related activities in the local Astellas affiliates or affiliate countries. And I've actually been working quite closely with them. And Astellas is the name of the organization. I can't remember if I mentioned earlier or not, where I currently work.
How many offices do you work across now? So going from a fairly small startup type of environment to such a global organization, I mean, how many colleagues or departments do you tend to interact with?
When I worked for the startup company before they got acquired by Astellas, it was a small company within one small area, which was the San Francisco Bay Area, and that was the extent. And we were a brand new procurement, just got created, right? So we were just working with finance, mainly accounts payable, right? And then of course with the business as well. And now being part of a large organization and my role being a global supplier lead within this large global organization, I work with, within Procurement Excellence, like I said, all those main customers that we work with also apply to me. And those customers, such as the procurement business partners, spread across the world. We have, I think, something like 70 affiliates, if I remember correctly, across the world. The company is around 16,000 employees. And in addition to working with the global procurement customers that I just mentioned, we also, in my role, I work with master data management, right? Very closely, actually, which there's a portion that focuses on the EMEA and Americas region, and then there's a portion that focuses on the APAC, which includes the Asian side, and then also Japan and China. So there's different business process owners. Well, one that is in charge of the APAC area, another one that's more in charge of EMEA and Americas. And you see that across different departments, if you will, right? So the master data management has kind of two main focuses, with one kind of global person overseeing the whole thing. And then in addition to master data management, we also have a legal group. There's the local legal groups that work on a more local level. And then we also have a larger organization called GCO that just got created. And I'm forgetting now what the acronym means. Global Contracting Organization, I think is what it stands for. And then also procurement operations, which falls actually under a different area than global procurement. It used to be all part of one purchasing, but they split it when global procurement was created about 2 years ago. So they do more of the global business services aspect of purchasing, right? And procurement focuses more, I would say, on the upstream parts with supplier negotiations, cost savings, in that kind of area, such as category manager and sourcing leads. They obviously focus on sourcing and category strategies.
It sounds like a very complex, matrixed organization to navigate. How have you found that? I mean, are there any particular strategies which worked before, which don't work now? Presumably you must have had to adapt to become effective in that kind of environment.
Yeah, so if we're going to talk about challenges, the challenges that I faced working for a small organization had some unique aspects to them compared to working for a large organization. But I would say there's also quite a few similarities just on a larger scope. One being, I would say, training related wise. I saw a need for an onboarding program. It just wasn't present at the small organization. And I implemented a program to try to address that gap. And then when I moved to the larger organization, I'm seeing also, lots of examples, ineffective training material or inadequate and ineffective training material. But now this is on a global level, so it's even more of a challenge, right? But a unique challenge to a large organization, other than, like I said, them sharing the similarity with the training aspect, is that you have these cultural differences which contribute to not being as open to collaboration and feedback, for that matter.
Okay.
And that can perpetuate the different departments as well as the affiliates within the various countries to work in silos rather than as one team. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, and it's not necessarily specific to procurement. It extends across the organization, but I think it's relevant for procurement because it hinders our ability to be able to progress on the continuous improvement projects at a reasonable rate, right? Because if people are not willing to optimally collaborate across the different regions and departments because of the cultural differences and are not open to feedback, it can really, like I said, stall us in the progress we're trying to make.
How'd you get around that?
I'm focused on what I have control over. And for me, what I've tried to do, and I think it has been effective, is again, focusing on my strength with relationships. I've tried to build relationships with my colleagues that, again, I work with across the organization in different affiliate countries, both that support procurement directly and indirectly. And by building those relationships, I think I helped enhance information sharing. And more importantly, I also helped build trust by, again, being authentic, listening to what the customers need. And again, by saying customer, all the people that I've mentioned that I work with, and involving them in problem solving and process improvements. I think that's key to be more engaged and to build that trust. So by doing these things, I think I helped improve their openness towards collaboration as well as feedback. However, to realize that, on a larger scale globally across the organization, I think there needs to be a cultural shift. And I leave that up to the leaders of the organization. Yeah.
I think that point you made about knowing what your span of control is really important, because there's only so much you can do, and just focus on the areas that you can actually make an impact. Let's talk about supplier data. Data and supplier data is something which clearly is an area of passion for you. Why is supplier data quality so important? How would you sort of summarize the benefits of good quality supplier data, please?
Supplier data, and in fact, a lot of data, but supplier data in particular, I think is relevant for procurement in the aspect of the fact that if we don't have accurate spend data related to the suppliers, right, that will ultimately affect the decisions made around category strategies, sourcing initiatives, whether we should even work with a supplier, not necessarily spend related, but risk type of related data, right? And our main focus is right now is sustainability, which also includes the risk factors, right? So having information accurate information and comprehensive information around the suppliers that we currently work with is critical, I think, in making for procurement to make decisions in relation to cost savings, again, category strategies, who we want to continue working with, who we don't.
So you talked about moving from the easier to track financial metrics, which you'd have typically in your ERP, to sustainability types of metrics. What are those metrics? How do you capture sustainability impact of suppliers? It's a bit of a journey, isn't it?
Well, so interestingly enough, the sustainability effort is something very new. We're literally pushing that. Again, keep in mind, the Global Procurement organization is very new. It's only a couple of years old, right? Before that, it was combined with, like I said, the Global Business Services as under purchasing. And so the whole global mindset and including the initiative towards, having a sustainable sustainability focused program is brand new. Like, we're literally focusing on that right now, and I'm just getting involved, dipping my toes in, if you will, into the area. So we have not come up with the metrics yet.
Yep. It's clearly so important. Astellas as an organization has a net zero commitment by 2050.
Yes.
It's great, obviously, having the big organizational goal, but at some point, particularly because Scope 3 emissions from the suppliers are such a critical factor in getting there, it is going to be important for procurement, I guess, to be able to break that down and to be able to track that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example right now. We are, because you can't do it all at once, but what we're trying to prioritize is in relation to the supply chain focus of packaging, raw materials, right? How do we get innovation ideas from suppliers in their realm to improve our sustainability around that, as well as renewable, manufacturing raw materials, or I think it was renewable energy. So those are the first two, I would say, initiatives that we're focusing on and trying to get innovation ideas from suppliers on how we can improve in that area. And from that, we're going to roll out additional ones. But yeah, it doesn't make sense to cover it all at once. It's not going to happen. So we're thinking, where can procurement make the biggest difference? And this is actually more supply chain management related, but certainly, a very important piece that I think procurement can influence.
Yeah, all of this supplier data, where does that sit for you? Is that all within the ERP, or what kind of tools and technologies are you using for that?
So we use various systems, SaaS systems, for different purposes, and there's some interrelation. That's where I come in with trying to understand every single one of them in my current role and seeing how we can better utilize and clean the data in the system, as well as implement processes to make sure that we continue moving forward, we get clean data rather than, junk in, junk out kind of mentality.
Yeah.
So one of the key ones would be SAP, which is the ERP system that's used. And Ariba in particular is the one that we're using for, generating requisitions and POs. The Ariba system, the generation, that's really not just procurement specific, that's more a business area. What's procurement specific, we have a spend analytics SaaS system that we're using currently that transfers information from SAP in relation to invoice data, right? And allows us to generate reports related to the invoice spend and the supplier information that we think is relevant, such as the different commodity codes or category purchasing categories, evaluating, if it's relevant for company code information, which is associated with different legal entities, affiliates that are part of Astellas, as well as payment terms, which is actually a big focus right now. So that would be the spend analytics tool. Then we also have another SaaS system that focuses, it's kind of like if you will, a platform that allows for category strategies to be updated, for sourcing initiatives to be tracked. So that would be another one. And then a key one that we've been using in relation to supplier relation management, which is also a new initiative and has been developing over the last couple of years. We use this tool. You may have heard of Visible, or maybe not, but it's a supplier management platform supplier relationship management platform in a sense where we are focusing on uploading information in that system relevant to our key suppliers, which we define as strategic or preferred based on our supplier relationship management segmentation evaluation. And simply because we can't possibly manage all relationships, right? So we're focusing on the ones that are, both the highest priority in regards to having contracts as well as highest spend, among some other criteria. Mm-hmm. So those key suppliers are the ones we have in the system, and we're managing within the system the relationships, anything from KPIs related, and business and procurement is involved in that effort. With, of course, we actually have an SRM team that's administering that, and I've been in my role also collaborating with them and improving the data within Visible as well to help with the supplier relationship management in that area. Mm. So I would say those would be the three main ones. We also have one for risk management. I think there was something like five different main ones that we're using for risk management, for category strategy and sourcing, for spend analytics, and for supply relationship management. I don't know if that's 4 or 5 that I mentioned. Oh yeah, and then SAP, of course. Yeah,
it's a lot, isn't it? I mean, it's a complex system you're describing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's all absolutely useful and necessary. The problem is that there's limitations with what we can do in each system, and limitations even with how things have been configured since we started using the system, where that system may actually have more capabilities, but it just hasn't been configured for Astellas. So those are the challenges we're facing right now as we're trying to do continuous improvement, or I'm trying to implement continuous improvement. You can only do so much with these limitations. So focusing more on process improvements rather than system improvements at the moment. But yeah.
What advice would you give to others who clearly can see that their supplier data isn't what it needs to be? They want to get started on this journey of cleaning up the data, getting more insights and more value from it. Where would you start?
So absolutely focusing on the concepts. I believe it's the Pareto principle, right? Where don't tackle it all. Certainly you cannot cleanse it all with the limited resources we have. If we can get artificial intelligence to help with this, which I think we will at some point, that's a different story. But when you have limited resources, people-wise, you want to tackle the ones that are high spend and strategic and preferred, meaning the key suppliers that I mentioned earlier. And pretty much the high spend, the key suppliers are going to fall within the high spend. So the top 20%, right, of spend that addresses really 80% of the benefit, in a sense. I believe that the concept behind the Pareto principle. So that would be my advice, and that's how I've been strategically approaching how we tackle all these cleansing efforts and improvement ideas as I work with master data management on the improvements, because that's something that's manageable, something that we could actually do, and that will make the biggest impact in the change, as opposed to just trying to tackle it all. Yep. And trust me, the business has asked for, so aren't we going to clean up all of it? And I'm like, we can't. We don't have the bandwidth for that, but we don't necessarily need to. If we focus on the high spend with almost everything we do, we're going to make a much bigger impact than if we just try to tackle random ones all over. Right? Yeah. So that would be my advice.
Great. Makes complete sense. Any final advice you could share on how to make a fulfilling career working within biotech?
Sure. And I would say my suggestion or recommendation would be not specific necessarily just to biopharma, but just in general, whatever career you embark on. I think it's important to create relationships and friendships and supportive relationships throughout your career, to challenge yourself, to work on or be willing to regularly learn new things and have a growth mindset, celebrate your successes with your team or teams, report to a manager that supports your growth and autonomy, and above all, prioritize work-life balance.
Lana, thank you so much for your time today. Really interesting covering all of that. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
And thank you to Thermo Fisher for sponsoring the PharmaSource podcast. For more insights into procurement and outsourcing in the biopharma industry, head to pharmasource.global and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you for listening.